There was a day Ade didn't want to go to school anymore. His heart pounded as he stood at the gate, his palms sweaty. Tund and his friends had laughed at him again. He'd had enough, but he didn't know what to do. Once upon a time, in a beautiful city filled with tall buildings, honking cars, and crowded streets, there lived a boy named Ade. He was 12 years old, and his biggest dream was to play soccer for a professional team. He loved watching matches on the small TV in the living room. Every time his favorite player scored a goal, Ade would jump up and kick an imaginary ball, pretending he was on the field too. But at school, things were not so great for Ade. He went to a public school that was full of kids from different neighborhoods, some rich and some poor. Ade's family wasn't rich. His dad worked as a driver, taking people around the city in an old taxi. His mom sold food at a small market stall. They worked hard to make sure Ade and his younger sister, Beezy, could go to school and have enough to eat, but there wasn't much money for extras. Ade's clothes were always clean, but his uniform was old, and his shoes had seen better days. He never had the cool sneakers or the latest backpack like some of the other kids. Most of the time, Ade didn't care about that stuff. He was happy with what he had. But at school, those things mattered to the other kids, especially to a boy named Tund. Tund was in Ade's class and was known as the tough kid. He was bigger than most of the other boys, and everyone listened to him. He had a group of friends who always did whatever he said. For some reason, Tund had decided that Ade was his favorite target. It started small. Tund would make fun of Ade's shoes during recess or laugh at him for bringing food from home instead of buying snacks from the school canteen. The teasing didn't seem like a big deal at first, but as the weeks passed, it got worse. One Monday morning, Ade was walking to class when Tund and his friends spotted him. "Look, here comes Ade, the soccer star with his broken shoes," Tund shouted, and the other boys burst into laughter. Ade tried to ignore them, but it was hard. His face turned red, and he kept his head down as he walked past them. He wished he could say something back, but he didn't know what to say. When he reached his desk, Ade sat down and took out his books. He told himself that if he just focused on his studies, the day would pass quickly. But school wasn't easy when you felt like everyone was laughing at you. During class, the teacher asked a question about math, and Ade knew the answer. He hesitated before raising his hand, knowing that Tund and his friends were watching him. As soon as Ade started to speak, Tund snickered from the back of the room. "Why are you even trying, Ade? You'll never get it right," Tund said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The whole class laughed, and Ade's face turned red again. He quickly mumbled the rest of his answer and sank into his seat. Even though the teacher didn't notice the teasing, Ade could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him. It felt like he was trapped, and no matter what he did, Tund would always find a way to make him feel small. That night, Ade couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, thinking about how much he hated going to school. He used to enjoy learning, especially when it came to subjects like math and science. But now, every time he thought about raising his hand in class, he remembered Tund's laugh and the way the other kids followed him. His dad had noticed that something was wrong. "Ade, what's going on at school?" he asked one evening as they sat together after dinner. "You've been quiet lately." Ade shrugged. "Nothing, Dad. I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. Deep down, he wished he could tell his dad the truth, but he didn't want to seem weak. He was afraid that if he told his parents what was happening, they would worry too much or tell the school, which might make things even worse. So, Ade kept quiet, hoping that somehow things would change. As the days passed, things only got worse for Ade. Tun's teasing turned into full-blown bullying. Every day, Ade dreaded going to school. He would walk slower and slower as he got closer to the school gate, hoping that somehow Tund wouldn't be there that day. But Tund was always there, waiting for him with his group of friends. One afternoon, after the final bell rang, Ade packed his bag quickly, hoping to get home before Tund could find him. But as soon as he stepped out of the classroom, Tund and his friends blocked his way. "Where are you rushing to, Ade?" Tund asked, a sneer on his face. "You think you can just run away like that?" Ade froze. He didn't know what to say. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, hoping a teacher might come by and stop them. But the hallway was empty. Before Ade could react, Tund grabbed his backpack and yanked it off his shoulder. "Let's see what's inside," Tund said, dumping Ade's books and lunchbox onto the floor. His friends laughed as they kicked the books around, scattering papers everywhere. Ade stood there, feeling helpless. He wanted to fight back, to grab his things and run, but his legs felt like they were glued to the ground. He didn't know what to do. The laughter echoed in his ears, and for the first time, he felt completely powerless. Just then, a teacher came around the corner, and Tund quickly dropped the bag. He gave Ade a final shove before walking off with his friends, acting as if nothing had happened. The teacher didn't seem to notice what was going on, and Ade was too embarrassed to say anything. He bent down to pick up his things, his hands shaking. When Ade got home that day, he felt drained. He didn't even have the energy to play soccer in the street with the other kids, something he usually looked forward to every afternoon. Instead, he went straight to his room and lay down on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day replayed in his mind over and over again. For the next few weeks, Ade tried to avoid Tund as much as possible. He sat at the back of the class, never raising his hand, and spent his lunch breaks hiding in the library or behind the school building. He didn't play soccer anymore, and he stopped hanging out with the few friends he had. Ade felt alone, trapped in a cycle of fear and shame that he didn't know how to break. At home, his parents noticed the change. Ade wasn't the cheerful, energetic boy they knew. His mother tried to ask him about it one evening while they were having dinner. "Ade, are you sure everything is okay at school?" she asked, her voice gentle. Ade forced a smile and nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine, Mom." But deep down, Ade knew he wasn't fine. He just didn't know how to make things better. Every day felt like a repeat of the last. The same fear, the same shame, and the same feeling of being completely alone. One day, as Ade sat alone during lunch, something unexpected happened. A new boy named Sei had joined Ade's class a few days earlier. Sei was quiet and kept to himself, much like Ade. But there was something different about him. He didn't seem to care what the other kids thought, and he always carried himself with a quiet confidence. On this particular day, Ade was sitting on a bench behind the school, eating his lunch in silence. He didn't expect anyone to talk to him. But then, out of nowhere, Sei walked up and sat down next to him. "Hey," Sei said simply. Ade looked up, surprised. He hadn't spoken to Sei before, and he didn't know why the new boy would want to sit with him. "Hi," Ade replied quietly. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Sei opened his lunchbox and started eating, as if sitting with Ade was the most natural thing in the world. Ade wasn't used to this. Most of the time, the other kids ignored him, or worse, made fun of him. But Sei didn't seem to care about that. After a while, Sei spoke again. I noticed you don't hang out with the other boys much. Ade shrugged. I don't really fit in. Sei nodded, as if he understood. Yeah, I get that. I used to go to a different school, and it was the same for me. People can be pretty mean sometimes. Ade felt a small sense of relief. It was nice to hear someone say that, to know that he wasn't the only one who felt out of place. They talked for the rest of lunch, and by the time the bell rang, Ade felt a little lighter. Sei wasn't like the other boys. He didn't make fun of Ade or ask why he didn't have cool shoes. Instead, he just listened, and that made all the difference. Over the next few days, Sei and Ade started spending more time together. They ate lunch together, and after school, they would walk part of the way home before going their separate ways. For the first time in months, Ade felt like he had a real friend. Sei wasn't popular, but he didn't seem to care about that. He was confident in who he was, and slowly, that confidence started to rub off on Ade. One afternoon, as they were walking home, Sei said something that stuck with Ade. You know, it's not about being popular or having the best stuff, Sei said. It's about knowing who you are. Once you know that, no one can make you feel bad about yourself. Ade thought about that for a long time. He had spent so much time worrying about what Tund and the other kids thought of him that he had forgotten who he really was. He wasn't just the quiet boy with the old shoes. He was more than that. He just needed to remember it. As Ade and Sei's friendship grew, so did Ade's confidence. He still tried to avoid Tund and his friends, but he didn't feel as scared as before. Sei's words had made a difference. Ade started to realize that he didn't need to be the toughest or the most popular kid at school. He just needed to be himself. One day, during a math lesson, the teacher asked a question that Ade knew the answer to. For the first time in months, he raised his hand. Tund, who was sitting at the back of the class, noticed and snickered. Here we go again. Let's see if Ade the genius can get it right this time. Ade's heart raced, but he ignored the comment. The teacher called on him, and Ade answered the question clearly. To his relief, the teacher nodded approvingly. Well done, Ade, the teacher said, moving on with the lesson. Ade felt a small rush of pride. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next day, however, Tund and his friends took things to a new level. It was during lunch, and Ade had just taken out his food to eat under the tree, like he always did with Sei. But this time, Sei was absent, as he had been called to the principal's office for something unrelated. Ade sat alone, unbothered at first, enjoying the quiet. Suddenly, Tund and his gang appeared from nowhere, their faces twisted with malice. You think you're smart, don't you? Tund growled, stepping closer to Ade. His friends surrounded him, cutting off any escape. Ade stood up, trying to gather his things, but Tund snatched his lunch from his hand, dumping it on the ground and kicking it away. Ade froze, his stomach tight with fear. He had faced Tund before, but this time, there was something more dangerous in his eyes. Just leave me alone, Ade said, his voice shaky but firm. Tund wasn't in the mood to leave him alone. With a smirk, he shoved Ade hard, causing him to stumble and fall. Before Ade could react, Tund and his friends were on him. They kicked and punched him, laughing as they did. Ade curled up on the ground, trying to protect his head and body, but the blows kept coming. The pain shot through him like fire. His face stung where a punch had landed, and his arms ached from blocking the kicks. He could barely breathe, but they didn't stop. Tund grabbed him by his collar and dragged him toward the school toilets. Let's teach you a real lesson, Tund said coldly. They pushed Ade into the small, dirty toilet, locking the door from the outside. Ade heard their laughter as they walked away, leaving him bruised, beaten, and alone. For what felt like hours, Ade stayed in the toilet, too scared and too weak to move. His body hurt all over, and tears stung his eyes, but he tried to hold them back. He didn't want anyone to see him cry. But the pain was too much, and soon the tears flowed freely. Eventually, one of the janitors heard the faint banging from inside and came to unlock the door. When he saw Ade's bruised face and the state of his clothes, the janitor immediately took him to the school nurse. That evening, when Ade's parents saw the bruises on his face and arms, they were horrified. "Ade! What happened to you?" his mother cried, gently touching the swollen bruise on his cheek. Ade winced at her touch but tried to stay strong. "It was Tund and his friends," Ade mumbled, his voice trembling. "They locked me in the toilet after they beat me up." Ade's father clenched his fists, his face tight with anger. "This has gone too far. We're going to the school tomorrow, first thing." The next morning, Ade's parents went straight to the principal's office. His mother was near tears as she explained what had happened, and his father's voice was steady but filled with fury. The principal, shocked by the severity of the situation, immediately called Tund and his friends into the office. When confronted, they couldn't deny what they had done. The evidence was clear on Ade's body. Tund tried to act tough, but even he knew they were in serious trouble. After a brief investigation, the school authorities made their decision. Tund and his friends were expelled for their actions, and the principal assured Ade's parents that such behavior would never be tolerated again. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Ade," the principal said, looking at Ade with genuine remorse. "We should have seen the signs earlier, but I promise you will be safe from now on." Things didn't change overnight, but slowly, life at school got better for Ade. With Tund and his gang gone, Ade felt a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. He no longer had to worry about being attacked or ridiculed in class. The other kids, now seeing Ade in a different light, began to treat him with more respect. One afternoon, as Ade was sitting under the tree where he and Sei usually ate lunch, a group of boys from his class approached him. They weren't part of Tund's group, but they had never spoken to Ade before. "Do you want to play soccer with us?" one of the boys asked. Ade hesitated. He hadn't played soccer with the other boys in months. But when he looked at Sei, who was sitting next to him, Sei gave him an encouraging nod. With a small smile, Ade agreed, and soon he was on the field, kicking the ball and laughing with the other boys. It felt good to be playing again, to be part of something without worrying about what Tund would say. From that day on, things kept getting better. Ade's confidence grew, and he started raising his hand more in class. His grades improved, and his teachers noticed the change in him. His parents, too, saw the difference. Ade was happier, more talkative, and no longer carried the weight of fear on his shoulders. Tund was gone, and the days of bullying felt like a distant memory. Ade had learned that standing up for himself didn't mean fighting back or being mean. It just meant knowing his worth and not letting others take it away from him. As the school year went on, Ade made more friends. He and Sei remained close, and together, they showed that kindness and strength didn't have to come from being the loudest or the toughest. In the end, Ade realized that school wasn't such a scary place anymore. He wasn't afraid to speak up or be himself. For the first time in a long time, Ade was truly happy. I hope you found it entertaining, and please, if you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe to my channel. It is a way of supporting me and helping me grow. Turn on the notification so when I post more interesting stories you will get to see them. See you in my next video. Thanks for watching.